This segment of the Alice Stewart Show is brought to you by the Countertop Store, Central Arkansas's premier countertop authority. For custom fabrication and installation of granite, tile, laminate, copper, and more, the Countertop Store, 888-510-4773.
7:21, and we're back here on the Alice Stewart Show. The election clock is ticking, 53 days to the midterm elections, and it is full speed ahead. Generally, the way these cycles work is candidates and campaigns raise money and campaign, and then Labor Day comes, and it is a full sprint to the finish, and that is the take of my next guest, Blake Rutherford. He is opinion writer for Arkansas Business. He is also the vice president at the McLarty Companies. He joins us this morning. Blake, good morning.
Good morning, Alice. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you could join us. And you wrote an op-ed or a opinion piece in Arkansas Business. Folks can go to arkansasbusiness.com, and you hit the nail on the head. Now it really begins in terms of moving forward to the midterm elections. But your take on this is that, to be honest about something, you say the summer of 2014 was dismal.
Right. I mean, and that's not a partisan opinion. I mean, it's just we just had a very difficult summer. If you balance all of the difficult circumstances abroad, everything from the challenge with Russia to the circumstances with ISIS and many things that are also going on. And you balance that with the difficult economic circumstance. We got a very bad jobs report in August, which essentially shows that our job growth is much less than projected, and more people are just leaving the workforce. They're just giving up entirely, which is a very, very bad thing, Alice. And so we enter the fall election season. Labor Day is the unofficial start day with Democrats in power, but with a perilous political climate. And the president delivered a speech the other night on ISIS and how we're going to approach that problem. But there's still a lot more that's going on, and it's going to influence what happens over the next 7.5 weeks as we venture towards Election Day. And
your take or your feedback on the president's speech, was he strong enough? Did he give defined enough strategy moving forward?
I think he was strong in his presentation, Alice. I think the plan itself, certainly I'll leave it to foreign policy experts to dissect it, but many of them, including Richard Haas and even Richard Engel of NBC News, who's been covering conflict for a very long time, were very critical of the plan, saying that it was incomplete and that it wouldn't really achieve what the president had intended for it to achieve. Time will tell in that regard, but I don't think it was enough probably to satisfy the critics who have been clamoring for action well up until now. There was really nothing in the president's plan that you hadn't heard from others, that people hadn't been talking about, for almost a year now, particularly when you talk about the piece regarding Syria. So in that respect, we'll just have to wait and see and let this thing get going, but it's going to be a prolonged venture. It will outlive the president's tenure in the White House. But I thought there was some passion there, which the president had been criticized for all over the summer. Everything from calling ISIS a JV team to spending too much time at leisure while terrible things were happening to American journalists. So I think in that regard, there was some bass in his voice, and that was needed and necessary. So overall, I'd say it was probably a mixed bag. I don't think it achieved the political outcomes that it needed to, and I thought that was important for the Democrats. So probably advantage Republicans if you're thinking about it in terms of a political scorecard.
Absolutely, and regardless of how many view it had to be done, given how the threat has grown. It had to be done, and I think being on the eve of 9/11 was important also. And okay, we've highlighted the 2014 and what you view as dismal or not good in terms of foreign policy and jobs. So moving forward to the midterms and the elections, you have a take on this right now in terms of the Democrats and Republicans in the electorate, but you say that the Democrats right now have an edge in enthusiasm.
Yeah, the Democrats, and that probably surprises a lot of people, Alice, considering the circumstances of the country, which is why I think, it's worth contrasting the two. Right now, Democrats are more excited about their candidates than Republicans are. And that matters, as you know good and well. People who are motivated to vote show up and vote. People who are not motivated to vote on Election Day can get distracted with any number of other things. And so we'll begin to see as early voting begins how that translates. But in the meantime, I think that the Democrats certainly see enthusiasm as a way to propel their voter mobilization efforts. And so as you think about get out the vote, as you think about field organization, as you think about moving people from their homes or places of work to the polls, that's a statistic that Democrats have to be excited about. And if you're Republicans, despite everything, if people are not excited for their candidate, then you have cause for concern.
And I think that comment or those numbers from an Atlantic piece, it's, as you say, encouraging for Democrats. Republicans also have a strong get-out-the-vote effort and a ground game. But you mention, in terms of Republicans, you point out they still have difficulty relating to voters.
Right. I mean, what we're seeing from the data is that when you ask questions about the president, Republicans do very well. But when you ask questions about relatability, and two things that I think are particularly illustrative, who is more concerned about the needs of people like you and who has a better understanding of the economic problems people are having, Democrats have a double-digit advantage. And so in that regard, I think you delve into issues that could possibly help guys like Mark Pryor, Mike Ross, and Pat Hayes, who can make the race about individual dynamics, who can localize it, who can make it about likability and relatability, and take the focus off just the president and voter attitudes about him in Arkansas, which are very negative.
Yeah, and I think Arkansas is a state to where you do take off the political labels and the titles, and it's a great retail politics state. So while it may be helpful or harmful to Pryor, Hayes, McPherson, and whatnot, it will be the same, helpful or harmful to Tom Cotton, Rick Crawford, French Hill, and that based on how they, as you say, can connect to the people.
Right. That's exactly right. So again, the campaigns, and we talked about this in an earlier segment with Robert. The campaigns really are going to make or break this election. How they choose to approach these final 7.5 weeks is going to be absolutely critical. It'll
be exciting. Blake Rutherford, Vice President of McLarty Groups, and you can see his piece at arkansasbusiness.com. Blake, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Alice.
Appreciate you. We're going to take a break. This segment of the program brought to you by the Countertop Store. Give them a call, 888-510-4773.